My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm an associate real estate broker in the state of Alaska, and my mission, as always, is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching in real estate. Today, we're going to be talking about the Eagle River market update and what it is that we're seeing in this small and yet very mighty market here in South Central Alaska. Before we get started, though, give this video a like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. You know that makes me so happy right here. And without further ado, let's go and jump into today's market update, looking first at the residential market. Now, the first thing that we want to see is what's going on in the single-family residential market for the inventory. Well, this time last year, there were 40 for the month of December, where we have the most completed information. There were 44 options available on the market, and now 44. So literally no moving of the needle one way or the other, even by one house. But looking historically, we see that normally around this time of year, we would see about 65 up to about 120, 110. So you do see that historically we are really, really low right now, even though year over year, there's literally no movement, not even by one. Second thing we see is the number of single-family properties that have actually sold for the month of December was 25 this time last year, and now it's 25 this year. So again, no movement, not even by one house, not really moving the needle. Looking back in time, though, we do see that kind of par for what we see for the month of December. Now, because we are looking at January, where we have all the completed data for the entire year of 2023, we have the ability to look back and see what the total overall year's worth of sold units were. So looking at that, we see that this time for the year of 2022, the number of properties that actually sold was about 550. Now we're seeing that the number of total properties that sold for the year of 2023 was about 410. So we do see a pretty sizable drawing back the number of properties that are actually selling year over year. Let's see what that looks like compared to previous years, though. Looking at previous years, we see that in 2021, the total was about 741 for the year. 2020, we see that it was about 580. And before that, it was about 2019 is kind of the bar, I guess you can say, where we kind of define what's more or less normal, whatever that means now. And it was right around like a 450, 480, somewhere in there. So the total number of properties is markedly lower than what it was back in the previous year, obviously, and it's still more or less within range what we would see in previous years leading up to COVID, even with available inventory being so much lower than what it was before. Now, the thing I know everyone really tunes in for, and that is the average sold price year to date. We see that that went from about $468,000 this time last year to about $493,000 this year, which means we're actually seeing about a 6% increase for the average sold price across the entire board year to date over in Eagle River. And that also means that it's not a decrease in the average sold price, but we do see kind of a slowing down at the rate at which it's increasing. Because last year, it was about a 10% increase for the average sold price year over year, and the year before that it was about an 8% increase. Prior to that, though, looking at 2020 and 2019, it was about 2.7 and about 2%. And this year, we're still looking at about a 6% increase for the average sold price. So overall in Eagle River, we are seeing a continued desire for homes in Eagle River because it's a great place to commute and it has a lot of great things in the community here where you can really just enjoy kind of the small town atmosphere without really having to go to Anchorage too much. And so for that reason, Eagle River continues to be a pretty desirable location, and it's kind of reflected in the average sold price because that is a faster rate of increase from what we see in Anchorage proper. Now let's switch gears a little bit and look at what's going on in condos. Now condos, never really big section of the market, but Eagle River is going to become more and more compressed with our limited space here. They're going to become a bigger deal, so we're covering it. Now, this time last year in December, we had 3 condos available. Now there are 9. So you do see an increase for the number of condos that are available, at least for the month of December. That really wasn't the case for the rest of the year, though. The next thing we want to look at is the total number of condos that have actually sold, looking first at the month of December. So the month of December in 2022, there were 6 condos that sold. The past year in 2023, there were only 3 condos that sold. And that's kind of representative of the entire year. And once we look at the total number of condos that sold for the entire year in Eagle River, it was 95 in 2022. And for the year of 2023, 50. So again, about half the condos that usually actually sold. So I would actually be very interested to know, kind of get an idea as to why that is. Maybe I think it really comes down to the specific condos that are selling. And because you would think during a time of not having a whole lot of inventory, we would have more and more of a push towards condos, and that would actually be going up instead of like getting cut in half. So I think it really comes down to just the number of condos, the inventory being so low that you really can't have big year-over-year increases for the number of units that are actually selling when they're not there to be sold to begin with. Looking previously to 2019 or 2020, I should say, we see that it was okay, so this past year, 2020, it was 50, and leading up to COVID, like it was about 78, 70, 76, 65. So within the same range, but again, condos aren't a really big part of the market here to begin with. All right, so we see a very, very small decrease in the average sold price for condos in Eagle River. It went from about $297,000 year to date, looking at 2023. And looking at the past year, 2023, we see the average sold price actually was about $295,000, which means that there is about a 0.1% decrease for the average sold price. Before we get too excited though, it was about a 11.3% increase for the average sold price for the previous year. And before that, it was about an 8.7 and then a 5.6 before that. But looking at 2019, it was about a 4.3% decrease. So you see, because inventory is just so small in Eagle River, you do get a little bit more volatility in those numbers. Because again, went from about 11% to, decreased by 0.5%, which that's not that big of a deal one way or the other. It's just not. If I'm looking at the year 2020, for example, we see that the average sold price was about $245 and now it's about $295. So looking historically, it's going to have to really drop to go back to what the levels were before. All right, we're going to jump into the multifamily market and the summary in just a minute, though. Before we do that, though, I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware we have our monthly meetups, I should say, for those of you who are physically here in Alaska. And these are great events for you to go to plug into because it's just kind of a laid-back atmosphere, and you get a chance to actually meet people who have recently moved here to Alaska. I know that for a lot of folks, kind of making new friends when they move to an area is really kind of a challenge. Once you get out of college, just from high school, it really becomes more challenging to meet people, and for that reason, we want to provide this to you just so it's an opportunity for you to actually plug in and really enjoy being in the state with other people. And for the upcoming meetup that we're doing for the month of January, we're just going sledding in the town square in Eagle River. If you want to hear about more meetups that we're doing in the future, more details about this one, do feel free to go check out down below where we have a link for Alaska monthly meetup. That is going to be a private Facebook group. Click that, we'll get you approved, and then that's going to be the great place for you to find out more information about this. So we got that going on. Make sure you plug into it, and let's go ahead and finish up today's market update. Now, looking at multifamily. First off, I'm going to say multifamily is actually a smaller piece of the pie of the total real estate makeup in Eagle River than condos are even, because this time last year there were 0 multifamily properties available on the market for the month of December, and this year at least there are 2. So very small decrease there, but obviously you can see just how little multifamily market is of the makeup for the real estate market here in Eagle River. Now, looking at the total number of multifamily properties that sold, we saw that this time last year there were 2 multifamily properties that sold in the month of December, and there were none from past month in December for 2023. Now, looking at the total number of multifamily properties that sold, we see that in 2022, the total number of multifamily properties that sold was 14, and we see that this year, whopping 4 for the entire year. That's the number of multifamily properties that sold. Now, looking back historically, that definitely is low. Looking the 2019 and before, it was 10, 12, 10, 6. So it's pretty low, just always, I guess, in general. But the 4 is definitely the lowest that we can see going all the way back to 2016. So it's pretty low. A big reason I think that is for why we see less multifamily properties selling in Eagle River is just because we have way more. The interest rates go up, and then that's more directly tied to the demand for multifamily. And not only that, but if you bought a multifamily property in Eagle River back when interest rates were really low, you're probably never going to let that go if you can possibly avoid it, because it's a great place to own a multifamily property because the headache factor is going to be a lot lower than what it's going to be in a lot of other areas. Now let's go and talk about the average sold price. So the average sold price, this was actually about $606,000 this time last year, year to date, and now it's about $400 and about $29,000. Now, before we get super excited and say, oh my God, that means there's a 30% decrease in the average sold price for multifamily in Eagle River, it's bonanza. Just because we have such a small inventory here, there were only 4 that actually sold. That's really hard to extrapolate any real data from, because you just get one turd in there and it throws everything off, because multifamily includes everything from the little duplex all the way up to the big multifamily property. And what this really tells me is we probably just had bigger properties that were selling back in 2022 and kind of the years previous to that, when the interest rates were really low, because you can imagine how well that stuff cash flows if you get a big investment property on like a 2-point-something% interest rate. You can see why that would be the time you would want to actually purchase, and those properties are a higher price tag. And so I kind of suspect that's what this is here. If you have multifamily properties in Eagle River, I suspect you've probably have seen an increase despite what you would looking at the data from these 4 properties. Really what it come down to is there might have been a couple properties that realistically are a single family, but because it could technically be a mother-in-law, somebody probably listed it as a multifamily as well, and it just wasn't as valuable as like a full-on fourplex, and so it just kind of tanks all the numbers there. So that's kind of what I suspect it is. If you do have multifamily properties in Eagle River, I suspect it's probably gone up because the rent has gone up, and you just kind of have to choose the time you're going to put your property on the market to hopefully coincide when the interest rates are lower. All right, so let's go and talk summary real quick here. The inventory remains pretty low for single-family properties in Eagle River, and this isn't that big of a surprise. Once you've found a property in Eagle River, most people really don't want to let go of them, especially in the past couple of years, because the interest rates have been so low. And if you're military and you have one, the thought process is, okay, we're going to hang on to this if we possibly can, just because the interest is so low, and then we're going to rent it out to somebody else while we're gone for about 3-4 years, however long that they're going to be PCSing somewhere else, and then we'll be able to come back. And I think that's really what the thought process is for a lot of people right now. And for that reason, the inventory remains pretty low, because usually we would have fairly good turnover rate, but that is just not the case right now. If interest rates suddenly take a big dive in the near future here, then if you're a buyer, it's going to be tough. I'm not going to lie, it's going to be a little bit of a bloodbath. It's probably going to be worse than what it was back in 2021, 2022, 2020, when the interest rates just dropped through the floor and everybody wanted to buy a house at the same time. Probably worse than that, because there's actually less inventory now than there was then. And that's the supply and demand. For those of you out there that are constantly online figuring out the newest secret metric out there that shows that it's going to indicate or predict what's going to happen in the real estate market or the economy in general, supply and demand, supply and demand, supply and demand, supply and demand, supply and demand. It all comes back to this very, very, very basic foundational concept. And right now, supply and demand says that if there is a big demand surge because the interest rates comes down, there's going to be a lot of wringing of hands and a lot of competition again. So if you're a buyer, you're on the fence as to whether or not you want to purchase or not. If you're in a position to do so, I would recommend doing it before we get into the normal buying season, because projections are interest rates are going to come down. And when they do, that is going to make it actually a lot more difficult, because everyone else is going to be doing the same thing. So if it's possible, good to get something and then just watch from the sidelines as everyone else is losing their mind trying to purchase a property, and then you can just refinance if you should so decide. If you are a seller, this is a great market to be selling in. It's not as quick as it was before, so don't expect you're going to put your sign out in the yard and we're going to be able to just get something for you within like 6 hours. It's like $40,000 over asking price. Not the same market that it was a couple of years ago. Still pretty solidly a seller's market though. So this has been my market update, talking about what's going on in the Eagle River market. I kind of feel like we just scratched the surface. If you have more questions or want to talk about how the real estate market impacts your specific situation, feel free to reach out to me through my website. Link for that is going to be in the description section down below. And make sure you indicate on there what it is you want to talk about, okay? That helps me out immensely. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.